fact, that's the kind of structural reform that you can have without touching the property tax the governor is talking about, where you will make the sales tax a much more stable tax, and you'll lower the, I think we're at the tipping point, where LA County, after this tax increase, is going to be almost 10% of the sales tax. As far as the comment that Mike made before I got here on whether Governor Schwarzenegger could have led a change on Proposition 13 particularly, I don't think that would have happened. I just don't believe that would have happened. You look at the polls today, 70% of the people want to keep that protection. Where Governor Schwarzenegger, I think, missed the boat, where he could have used his great following after the election, is if he had followed through with blowing up the boxes, his term. The California Performance Review, which we served on, Jim and I, was an opportunity, I think, to reorganize government. And a lot of time was put into that, a lot of effort, and clearly what happened is we saw all the turf wars. Everybody's standing up and saying, well, you don't want to take away my commission's important. But I believe people would have followed the governor at that point, and he backed away, and I think that's where he missed a golden opportunity.
I think one of the questions here is this a financial crisis? Do we need to restructure the tax system, which we've been talking about? Is it a political problem in terms of reorganizing redistricting, term limit reform, open primaries? Or is it a problem of specific lack of leadership? We've mentioned Governor Schwarzenegger and others who have been running the state. Or is it some combination of all three?
I think it's a philosophical dispute. When I got elected, I took the view that I would do the best I could within the resources that the economy provided us. And as Jim correctly said, the first couple of years money was pouring in the transom. Nonetheless, some members of my party wanted to increase taxes further. I said I was not going to have anything to do with it. We have a record surplus as it is now. What do we need more taxes for? So, but my general view was, whatever the economy provided, we would do the best we could, meaning we can't solve every problem on earth. And we have to have priorities. What is the most important thing? I always felt education was the most important thing, and the first governor to put it in accountability, and now we have a high school exit exam and merit scholarships and a whole bunch of other things that I'm proud of. But I made choices, and I tried to communicate to people that we were making choices. That is the heart of the dispute. Some people think if there's a problem, we should fix it. Ideally, that's true, but you work in a world of limits. We have limited resources, and the public is only going to tolerate so many times going back to them, asking them for more money.
But I think the public perception is that when things are good, when the economy is thriving, the attitude in Sacramento seems to be let the good times roll, without any thought given to the long-range view.
That's right. That's why there has to be a rainy day fund and a spending cap. And while my reading of these two measures is they're not perfect, they probably get 80% of where I'd like to see the state go. The voters will have a chance on May 19th to enact those two measures, and that will help stabilize the system and get off this what I call feast or famine budgeting.
Spending cap, rainy day fund.
Right. So you can spend so much money every year. It's a combination of the average over the previous 10 years.
You take the 10-year rolling average increase in revenue, and you can spend no more than that in any given year. Any revenue that comes in above that spills over into a rainy day fund.
Okay.
You asked the question, do we have a political problem or a fiscal problem? You have two. The political problem is everybody overspends. No matter how much revenue you have, everybody overspends. The other problem is, because we've overspent and now we have a fiscal problem, the problem is geometrically greater. So you have to deal with it in the short term and you have to deal with it in the long term. But no matter how high you take the tax rates up, unless you have an ability to cap people's ability to spend, everyone overspends. Everyone in government overspends.
In short, the Constitution has to preclude Republicans and Democrats from overspending and say to the people lobbying them, you have a wonderful program, but the Constitution won't let me fund it.
And there's a point where with the taxes, where it becomes counterproductive to continue to raise them, because there are reactions. We talked about human nature here. There's a human nature reaction to the taxes getting to a certain point. Will someone purchase? Will someone make that big purchase or not? Taxes will affect that. Taxes will affect business decisions. You want to split the property tax roll and make it more expensive to do business in California. Some businesses may say, well, let me build my next plant over the border. So those things all come into play. And I think the first step is, I agree with Governor Davis, the first step is getting that rainy day fund spending limit in place to try to put some controls on the ups and downs. So the first year, was it the first year, Governor, when you were in, and all of a sudden all the taxes went through the roof?
Right.
Under this plan, if this plan were in place, they couldn't have spent all of that.
Right.
They could have spent, put it into a reserve, or they could have used it for one-time purposes. Paying down debt, good thing to do. They could have even given a rebate back to taxpayers. That's what this plan will allow them to do.
Sure. When Pete Wilson left office, the general fund budget was $57 billion. The second budget that Governor Davis signed into law was $78 billion. That's a 34% increase in spending over 2 years. And by the way, we had the money because the NASDAQ and the Dow had jumped up.
In my fifth budget, we're still in the 70s.
Yeah, absolutely. But my point is, when you look across the rest of the country, we had increased spending 34%. The closest state to us was Massachusetts. They had only increased spending 19%. And because of the progressivity of our tax rates, and because markets move up and down the way they do, we get these huge spikes in revenue and we get these huge declines in revenue. So you have to find a way of evening them out.
But yet, despite what you're characterizing as the overspending, it doesn't seem that California has gotten much for the spending. I mean, you look at the infrastructure in the state; it's in pathetic condition. Many of the schools statewide are not doing well.
I don't disagree with you. And by the way, voters are very, very clear. When voters think they're getting bang for their buck, when they are happy with what government is spending their resources on, they have shown time and time again a willingness to vote to raise their own taxes. It's when they don't think their tax dollars are being spent efficiently and effectively that they react, in some cases horribly, to tax increases. I don't think we're getting our bang for our buck in California, and
Well, where's the money going? All this overspending.
We want to improve schools. So we say we want to encourage better people to join the teaching force. So we're going to give huge pay raises to teachers. Well, we haven't gotten rid of any teacher. We've simply taken those who are there who we don't think are good enough and given them raises. It's one of the reasons a lot of the Democrats in the legislature now are much more willing to cut education funding because they don't see production in the schools. They just see a bunch of teachers getting higher pay raises.
The spirit of, I keep coming back to Michael's, one of his initial premises is that we don't have candor. We're not talking about choices that need to be made.
Yeah.
When I became governor, I increased teacher salaries so that the starting teacher who has to have a college degree got $35,000. Now, in the dot-com economy of 2000, $35,000 is not an overwhelming salary.
Not at all.
And in society, you get what you pay for. Now, a lot of times, people are very dedicated. They spend their own money in addition to what they're paid to help improve the educational opportunities for their children. And children are blessed to have a teacher like that. And sometimes the teacher is not as well motivated. But, if you start paying people $50,000, $75,000 and treat them like professionals, hold them to higher standards, expect more of them, you'll see a result in the performance of the students.
Well, and let's just to draw a line from that, and once again to get back to this question of how do we calculate the tax on citizens of California. I've had, my two children have gone through an entire K through 12 course. That's two of them in this state in the public schools, and I can tell you that maybe my income tax has been capped, but the cost of sending the kids to the public school and getting them the programs that make for a well-rounded high school graduate has gone sky high. The reason that every parent is constantly being dunned for extra money and contributions for sports, music, art, to pay for an extra teacher on the faculty. This is a cost. This is a cost that the middle class pays and the working class pays because those are the taxpayers who are in the public school system.